Hello, friends. Good morning to you. Hey, gang. How are you this morning? Good morning, Yvette. Hey, Kristen. Good morning to you. You are great. Hi, Priscilla. Hope you're having a good day. John, good morning to you. Sporting my beautiful Of Moose and Mountain sticker. Guten Morgen, Herr Bueller. Mein Kapitan. Oh, Captain, my Captain. How are you? So glad you are well and glad you're here. So fun to have Dave here. Dave has forgotten more things about Christianity than I know. So, and mostly just about being a good human being. But I never necessarily knew a lot about those things anyway. Um, so glad. So good you're here. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. We'll give her one more minute and then we will get going. So nice to see you all. Uh, I do hope, as it is, I say it, I try to say it every day. I really do, that your appearances here and your little digital faces that stare out at me, or your comments of good morning and greeting to one another. Good morning, Donna. Glad you're here. I hope they are an encouragement to you, because they are an encouragement to me. That we might come here to our little digital coffee stop here at First Congregational Church, and we might be able to gather and spend this time together. Kim! Oh my goodness! It's old home week, everybody. Goodness, that's a joy. Nice to see you. Glad you're here. Uh, I hope you are well, and I hope all of yours are keeping well too. So, good morning, everybody. All right, it is the 23rd day of September. 23rd of September. We are almost in October, friends. 23rd day of September, the second day of fall at 11:11. And I am glad you're here. I'm glad you're a part of this journey. I'm glad that we get to spend some time together, because we're going to talk a little bit about time today. That we're going to talk about this little moment when the Apostle Paul is sending his second letter to the church in Corinth. Now, the church in Corinth, they're a problem lot. I'm not going to lie to you. There's infighting. They have contests with each other. They're trying to figure out, like, do we like this Paul guy? Do we like some other people? They kind of sound like church, don't they? Like, I mean, there's nothing really new about this and anything that we do. They sound like a bunch of humans gathered together, trying to be better than they are. That this is not, but so this is the second letter that Paul has to send them. So Paul is, Paul also is understanding at this point that his time is starting to get short. That there's some people believe that he was writing these letters from prison. I don't know about that. I think there's some difference in that. But whatever we know is that we know that this is his second letter to the church in Corinth, and Paul has already made all kinds of enemies throughout the ancient world, and he may be in trouble. And he understands that he's not always going to be around in order to help this church get going. So he's writing them this second letter. And in this second letter, he's really encouraging them to pull it all together, like to act, to be the church in the place that they are, to not kind of get attracted by the shiny things of the world or what's going on, about the struggles in which they've been a part, either both internally or with the world around them. Like there's a whole bunch of questions about what should they do around idols and all that sort of stuff. And Paul begins the 6th chapter of this letter, and he lays it right out here. He says this. He says, "As God's co-workers, we urge you not to receive God's grace in vain. For he says, 'In the time of my favor I heard you, and in the day of salvation I helped you.' I tell you, now is the time of God's favor. Now is the day of salvation." Now is the time of God's favor. Now is the day of salvation. This time of God's favor and this time of salvation that he is actually a quote. It's a quote from the 49th chapter of Isaiah. He's reaching back. Now they'll know this. They're schooled in the ancient world. They understand that he's speaking to a Hebrew audience, and so they get this reference that says, now is the day of salvation. Now is the time when the day of salvation. This is code words for the coming of the Messiah. This is the code words for this is the time that God is showing up. And this is the time that God is going to part the clouds. That God is going to move away the fog. God is going to open up, and that it's the time of God's favor. Now, it doesn't really seem like the time of God's favor. If you were kind of taking this from an external kind of view, it doesn't really look like a time of favor. It actually looks like a time of the church infighting and struggling to do more. All this stuff that they're doing, and they're struggling. But again, Paul lays it out. This is the time of God's favor. We spend a lot of time in this life, and just as the Church of Corinth, either chasing the shiny or trying to make meaning out of things, trying to understand what's happening in the world around us. We either watch, where we get information from. We try to figure out what's going on, and that we do this, I think, in large part, not just to make order of our lives, not just to make sense of our lives, but to seek the meaning in our lives. That great, the old movie quote, what's it all about, Alfie? It's a deep question in us. It's a deep question about what is this meaning of life that we're confronting ourselves with? And what is the time that we have to contend with it? And Paul's answer to this church is very clear. The meaning of life is right now. The great Joseph Campbell, and I fell in, when I was a young man, I fell in love. Before I was a part of church, before I had any kind of relationship with what with God, that I really loved Joseph Campbell. Now he was the professor from Sarah Lawrence College. He wrote a famous book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces, which really mapped out what he would call the heroic journey that we find in every movie that's ever been made. We find the heroic journey in every tale that's ever been told, from Star Wars to Gilgamesh. There is this template in the story of the hero's quest and the hero's journey, and what the hero must endure and go through in order to come out and be victorious. And so he dedicates his lifetime to this mapping out of the hero's journey. And he says it this way. He says, people say that we're all seeking is a meaning of life. And I don't think that's what we're really seeking. I think what we're seeking is an experience of being alive, so that our life experiences on the purely physical plane will have resonance within our own innermost being and reality, so that we will actually feel the rapture of being alive. That's what it is finally about. That we might feel the rapture of being alive. When Paul pulls out this text to his church in Corinth as a desperation ploy and a desperation play to be able to see what they are trying to say, he says that it is the time of God's favor is now. The experience of dwelling with the one who made you, with the one who called you into being, the experience of dwelling with the Messiah, the one who comes to rescue us from our troubles and from this predicament we seem to have found ourselves in, the one who arrives to bestow joy upon his children, that the rescuer and the bestower of all things, that one, the place to meet him is now. The place to meet him is in the experience of our day right now. And so I don't care what you're getting ready to do next when we shut down this live stream. I don't care if you're getting ready to go do the dishes or do some laundry, or maybe you're at work and you're contending with the things of work. In every breath that comes in every in-breath, in every blink of your eye, in every beat of your heart, in this moment, I tell you, as Paul tells his church so long ago, I tell you that now is the time of God's favor, and now is the day of salvation. I think in a lot of ways we run from this fact. That's in fact what Paul was criticizing his little church for there in Corinth. What he was, and I wouldn't even say he was criticizing it. He was encouraging them to turn away from their running. Because the thing is this truth that we all know, like if we're really ever going to have an experience of being alive, if we're ever going to have an experience of the divine in this world, if we're ever going to have an experience of, and I'm talking just beyond the corporeal bodily, like we're going to eat a delicious meal or we're going to snuggle up to somebody beautiful, like not the corporeal stuff, but the things that will endure and make meaning beyond the whether we have something delicious on our lips, the meaning of our days and our life and the tasks and the things that we set our hands to. That is the dwelling in the presence in the day of salvation. And the day of salvation is now. And we'll do a whole lot of things to run from it. And it doesn't make us bad people. Don't hear that. Don't hear what I'm not saying. It doesn't make us bad people. It just makes us people. Because in so many ways it's so difficult or so hard or so simply convicting that we might be so bestowed by the one who loves us with so much grace that it can't possibly be true. The great author James Thurber said that all human beings should try to learn before they die what they are running from, what they are running to, and why. What is it that in these days keeps you on this moment, like right now, like right before we end up putting to bed this little week that we're going to spend together, this little time of our, what is it that is keeping you from dwelling in the day of God's favor, in the day of salvation that is here and now. That experience of being alive, that the great scholar of all heroes suggests is what we are about. And it's worth thinking about that the weight of that, and I think Thurber is onto something, that the weight of that is that that sometime in life, we ought to think about what we are running from, to, and why. Campbell also goes on. He goes on to put it this way, to say this, and I like it as an aspirational idea, as an incarnational idea, as this idea that the meaning of our lives, the importance of our lives, the why we're getting out of bed and putting our little tootsies on the floor, part of our lives comes through us and to us, incarnates in the meat of our lives. He says this: life has no meaning. Each of us has meaning, and we bring it to life. It is a waste to be asking the question when you are the answer. We're the day of the Lord, the day of God's favor, the day of salvation is now. There's not a time other than now, our time. It's not a place other than our place, because it's not divorced from you, but it is bestowed and coming through and upon you from the one who made you. That's the power of this journey, friends. That's the power of this being. That's the power of this day and this moment and this life, all of it. And it's the power that Paul was trying to convey to his little church there in Corinth as they were looking at all the shiny things in the world, and rather than the grace and the peace and the love that was being in the middle of right where they were. I don't suggest that things are simple right now, or that things are easy, or that what I'm suggesting is somehow better than a simple idea of having more faith or more prayer, or just doing it faster or harder so that God will hear or know our petitions. There is chaos all around us. There are divisions in connections between people I never imagined I would even see. Right down the middle of families, I'm bearing witness to it. And yet in all of it, the truth of Paul's statement that he's drawing on from the 49th chapter of Isaiah, so he's drawing on it right from this text that was given to the Israelites as they were in exile, as they were being destroyed, as they were being ripped out of their homelands and their lives and their traditions and all that they had, that God's promise to them then, God's promise to Paul's church in Corinth 600 years later, and God's promise to us 2,000 years after that is the same. That we are the co-workers of God. And we urge you not, in Paul's words, to receive God's grace in vain. It's only in vain, friends, if our despair, or the enemy, or the worry, or all the devils that would gnaw on our skull at any given time would let the light go out in our hearts, would let the meaning of our days lose its flavor, to let the life of our time and our eyes be distracted by the shiny things of this world, because the day of God's favor is now, and the day of salvation is here. All right, friends, that's my hope for you today. I hope you're finding that meaning. You're finding that and as you step out from here, I really encourage you. Whatever you do next, whatever it is, be present in it. If your heart is anxious, if your mind is racing, if your body can't take it, whatever's going on, check in with that and let it be. Offer it up to the one who made you. Offer it up to God. Offer it up to all good things, and simply invite in God's grace. Invite it in so that it is not in vain, but that you might know in the experience of your living, God's grace with you, God's favor upon you, because it is what God wants most to grant you. Okay, friends, we'll pick it up next week. I want to encourage you. This Sunday is Rally Day. So Rally Day is it's a churchy kind of way of saying it is the beginning of Sunday school. So we are going to start our Sunday school at 9:15 for our 4th through 8th graders. We're going to have a brunch after church. Everybody's invited. Please come on out. It would be great to see your face and to see your kids with us in Sunday school. And we will have and we're going to have a new members class after that. So if you wanted to find out more about First Congregational Church and what it means to be a formal part of this journey, I would love to see you in that journey as well. All right, friends. We're gonna do a little change next week to 11:11. So stay tuned. It will still be here. We're not changing schedules, but we're just gonna swap things up a little bit. But you'll hear more about that next week. With all that, it is my hope that you know God's favor in your life today, right now, as this breath comes into your lungs, as this moment comes to pass, as you step off of this live stream to go do the dishes or go back to work or do whatever it is you're going to do, that you know God's favor. You know the day of salvation is not a day ahead. It's not a day behind. Your best days are not behind you, but it is right now. Today is the day of God's favor. All right, friends. We will see you and pick it up next week with another 11:11. Thanks for being here and being with us. Peace and grace, my friends.